Imagine playing a flawless, grueling game of chess for like 95 minutes against a literal grandmaster.
Oh, man, yeah. Exhausting.
Right. You anticipate every move, you neutralize every single threat, you have the board perfectly locked down, and then in the 96th minute, the absolute dying seconds of the match, you blink.
Yeah, you just leave one pawn exposed.
Exactly. One pawn exposed, and suddenly the entire board collapses. That agonizing, razor-thin margin between immortality and devastation is exactly what we are looking at today. Welcome back to another custom-tailored deep dive designed specifically for you.
Absolutely.
Today we are heading to Houston to dissect an absolute thriller. I'm talking about the dramatic, heart-stopping 2026 World Cup Round of 32 clash between Brazil and Japan.
And we have a really phenomenal stack of sources to pull this narrative apart for you today.
Yeah.
We're drawing from a deep tactical preview from the YouTube channel Talk Football HD, plus live match reports and, on-the-ground analysis from NBC Sports, CBS Sports, Al Jazeera, and The Guardian.
It's a lot of great coverage.
It really is. We are also cross-referencing player ratings from Goal.com, dipping into the fascinating, highly analytical psychology of Japanese fans on Reddit, and grounding the emotional fallout with a timely dispatch from the International Fair Play Committee.
Our mission today is to uncover how thy classic footballing narrative of structure versus freedom actually played out mechanically on the pitch. We're going to look at how legendary manager Carlo Ancelotti orchestrated a brutal, pragmatic, tactical masterclass to save Brazil from a historically embarrassing early exit.
A really close call for them.
Totally. And ultimately, we want to extract what this 96-minute war teaches us about leadership, adaptability, and emotional intelligence under immense pressure. Okay, let's unpack this.
So, to truly understand the gravity of what happened when the whistle blew, we really have to recognize that this matchup wasn't just a random draw between two nations with zero shared history.
Right.
The YouTube breakdown and the Reddit threads both highlight a deep foundational cultural DNA linking Japanese and Brazilian football. It heavily traces back to the Brazilian legend, Zico.
Yeah, he essentially planted the seed for modern Japanese football. Back in the early 90s, Zico went over to play for the Kashima Antlers and played a massive role in launching and popularizing the J-League.
Which is huge.
It was. He brought Brazilian coaches over, he helped shape their youth academy structures to emphasize technical skill, and, he eventually even managed their national team. He shifted their entire domestic mindset from amateur to deeply professional.
Which means when these two national teams step onto the same pitch, they aren't just opponents. There is a profound mutual respect built into the fabric of the match. But culturally and tactically, their approaches to the game are just night and day.
Oh yeah, completely different.
Talk Football HD laid out the quintessential clash of styles here. Japan relies on meticulous, almost obsessive, collective execution. They don't just run around pressing high and chaotically. They utilize a very rigid, highly organized, low-to-mid block, usually setting up in a 5-4-1 formation.
Let's visualize that for a second. A low block essentially means Japan is deliberately retreating and physically packing all 10 outfield players within about 30 or 35 yards of their own goal.
Right, basically a wall.
Yeah, they are creating an absolute traffic jam of bodies, and when they do win the ball back, they don't just clear it blindly. They use these highly choreographed around-the-press passing combinations.
Yeah, the technical precision is insane.
It is. They use quick one-touch triangles on the touchline, utilizing wide players like Ritsudoan and Junya Ito to bypass the opposition's initial wave of pressure. It's all about the system.
Every player knows their precise coordinates.
Exactly. I was thinking about it like two highly skilled musical groups, right? Japan is this classically trained symphony orchestra. Every single player has sheet music. They know exactly when the violins come in, when the brass section swells. It's beautiful, it's effective, but it strictly requires everyone to follow the script.
And Brazil is the total opposite.
Right. Brazil, especially under Carlo Ancelotti, is a world-class jazz ensemble. They lean heavily into expression. Ancelotti gives players like Vinicius Jr. the license to just improvise, to feel the rhythm of the game and create magic out of thin air.
And the vulnerability of a jazz ensemble is that if the rhythm section loses the beat, the whole performance unravels. Though out of possession, Ancelotti does implement a surprisingly strict structure to protect that freedom.
Oh, really? Oh, so?
Well, when Brazil doesn't have the ball, they squeeze the pitch laterally to just 40 meters and down to 36 meters in a mid-block.
Wow. Okay. So a standard pitch is about 68 meters wide. So by squeezing it to 40, they are deliberately abandoning the wide edges of the field.
Exactly.
They are betting that by creating an impenetrable swarm of bodies directly in the center, they can force a turnover before the opponent can even look toward the flanks.
It's a calculated defensive foundation designed specifically to give his attackers the physical and mental security to go entirely off script the second they win the ball back.
But wait, if Japan's known weakness, as highlighted in like all the tactical previews, is their lack of clinical goal-scoring ability against elite defenses, how did the Japanese fans on Reddit convince themselves they actually had a 30 to 40% chance of pulling off an upset?
Yeah, it sounds crazy.
Right? It really does. If your entire symphony is designed to defend, but you struggle to actually put the ball in the net, forecasting a 40% chance of beating Brazil feels highly optimistic.
Well, their reasoning was incredibly analytical, actually, viewing the matchup through the lens of gaming. On Reddit, the fans were comparing this match to the late stages of a video game.
Ah, I love that.
Yeah, they viewed Brazil as a boss rush, or the final boss of the Pokemon League, like the ultimate terrifying test you have to beat to prove you belong at the highest tier. And any gamer knows that every final boss, no matter how intimidating their stats are, has a mechanical weak spot if you study their attack patterns.
Okay, so what was Brazil's weak spot then?
The fans zeroed in on Brazil's aging midfield. 5 of Brazil's starters were over 30 years old. They also noted Brazil's heavy, almost singular reliance on Vinicius Jr. to create offense. The Japanese theory was simple. If we can physically neutralize Vinicius, and if we can force those older Brazilian midfielders into a track meet on the counterattack, we don't need to score 3 goals.
You just need one.
Right, we just need one perfect strike when their stamina drops.
Which transitions us perfectly from the theories on paper to the brutal reality on the grass in Houston, because the way Japan's rigid structure completely neutralized Brazil's jazz musicians in that first half was a literal masterclass in defensive geometry.
Oh, absolutely. It was tense.
The tension in the stadium was palpable. Let's set the scene in the 29th minute. Brazil is dominating possession, but they are just passing the ball in a U shape around the perimeter of Japan's penalty area. They look completely out of ideas.
Yeah, just totally stagnant.
Suddenly, the Brazilian defender Danilo misplaces a pass. It's a sloppy, unforced error right near the center circle. Japan's Kaishu Sano reads the mistake instantly. He intercepts the ball, surges right through the heart of the retreating Brazilian midfield, and fires a low, devastating shot past Alisson Becker into the bottom corner.
Just an incredible moment.
1-0, Japan. The crowd is absolutely stunned.
And if we look at the statistics from that first half, they tell a bizarre, paradoxical story. Brazil had 68% possession. They had 16 touches in the opposition penalty box compared to Japan's 2.
Wow, 16-2.
Yeah. But possession without penetration is utterly meaningless. The reason Brazil couldn't penetrate was a specific defensive trap engineered by Japan's right-sided duo, Takehiro Tomiyasu and Ritsu Doan.
We mentioned earlier that they had to stop Vinicius Jr., but the how is really fascinating. They didn't just foul him. They used the sideline itself as a third defender.
Yeah, really smart tactical defending.
Doan would step up to aggressively press the ball, while Tomiyasu covered the shadow behind him, physically trapping Vinicius against the touchline so he couldn't cut inside to his favored right foot. They completely shut down his channel and turned Brazil's most dangerous weapon into a ghost.
And because Tomiyasu and Doan committed so heavily and effectively to stopping Vinicius, Japan was able to comfortably win the ball back in those wide areas. And when they transitioned into their counterattack, it exposed the most glaring weakness on the pitch, the Casemiro problem.
Yeah, you're watching one of the most decorated defensive midfielders in modern history look entirely lost against a team that supposedly can't score. He took an early yellow card, which immediately stripped away his ability to tackle aggressively.
Which is a huge issue for a player like him.
Massive. And when Sano made that surging 40-yard run for the goal, Casemiro simply did not have the physical burst to catch him. He was visibly running in quicksand, trying to cover the ground required to protect his center backs.
This raises an important question, and it cuts to the absolute core of Carlo Ancelotti's genius as a manager. Any other manager watching their midfield get overrun, watching their veteran defensive shield become a liability on a yellow card, might have panicked. Goal.com noted that virtually every pundit expected Casemiro to be hauls off at halftime.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm playing a role-playing video game and my character's armor is broken, I unequip it immediately. I don't walk into the second phase of a boss fight wearing broken gear. Why on earth wouldn't Ancelotti bench him? It felt like he was staying on a sinking ship out of stubborn loyalty to a veteran.
Well, Ancelotti is famously known as the coolest customer in football because he processes panic differently. He recognized that the issue wasn't just Casemiro's legs. The issue was Brazil's method of attack.
Right, okay.
Brazil was trying to intricately pick the lock of Japan's defense with short, complex passes right through the middle. That was playing perfectly into the teeth of Japan's compact 5-4-1 structure. Ancelotti knew Casemiro still possessed immense value if the state of the game shifted. He didn't need to fire the employee. He needed to drastically rewrite the employee's job description.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Facing their earliest World Cup exit ever, with an entire nation holding its breath, Brazil goes into the locker room needing a miracle. But Ancelotti doesn't offer a miracle, he offers a sledgehammer.
Yeah, the tactical adjustments were brutal and swift. Lucas Paqueta goes off injured, which forces Ancelotti's hand to bring on the teenage wonder kid, Endrick. But the introduction of Endrick completely shifted the paradigm of the attack.
Completely.
Ancelotti instructed his team to stop messing around with intricate passes in the middle and to relentlessly cross the ball high into the penalty box. From the wings, from deep areas, just bombard the Japanese penalty area with aerial artillery.
You might be thinking, isn't that a bit primitive for the highly technical Brazilian national team? Just pumping the ball along, it sounds desperate. But mechanically, against a low block, it is devastatingly logical. When you play against a team that sits incredibly deep with 5 defenders, trying to thread a needle through their feet is nearly impossible.
Exactly. By putting Endrick and Matthias Cunha essentially as physical targets and having Gabriel Martinelli's bomb-high crosses into the box from deep, you bypass that crowded midfield entirely.
Yes.
More importantly, when you cross the ball from deep, you force those 5 Japanese defenders to turn and sprint while facing their own goal. They lose sight of the ball and the runners simultaneously.
You force chaotic aerial duels, you force second balls to bounce randomly, you entirely strip away Japan's comfortable, choreographed symphony and plunge them into an unpredictable dogfight inside their own penalty area. And, this sledgehammer approach paid off almost instantly.
It really did. In the 56th minute, Gabriel Martinelli bends an incredible looping cross to the back post. It curls dangerously away from the Japanese goalkeeper, Zion Suzuki.
And who is waiting there, perfectly positioned to thunder in the header? The veteran, Casemiro. The exact guy everyone thought should have been left in the locker room.
Unbelievable.
He scores the equalizer. That is pure cinematic redemption. Think about that for your own life, your own career, or your own team. When a strategy isn't working, do you double down on trying to fix the micro details of a failing system? Or do you step back and completely change the environment so your struggling personnel can actually succeed?
It's brilliant leadership. He trusted his player's character, but adjusted the entire tactical framework to hide Casemiro's physical deficiencies in midfield and highlight his elite strengths. In this case, his spatial awareness and aerial dominance in the penalty box.
So Brazil survives the immediate scare. The game is tied 1-1. But as the clock ticks past 90 minutes and stoppage time begins, the tension in the stadium becomes literally suffocating.
Yeah, you could cut it with a knife.
The specter of extra time is looming. And for Japan, as highlighted beautifully by The Guardian, that brings up a massive, historic mental block.
The psychological burden on this Japanese squad is staggering. Despite reaching the knockout stages 5 times in 8 World Cups, Japan has never won an elimination game.
Wait, really? Never?
Never. They have suffered some of the most heartbreaking exits in modern football history. Losing on penalties to Paraguay in 2010. Losing on penalties to Croatia in 2022. Giving up a 2-0 lead to Belgium in the final 20 minutes in 2018.
Man, the ghosts of World Cups past are literally circling the pitch. Japan has played a nearly flawless 95 minutes against the ultimate final boss. They're just seconds away from dragging the mighty Brazil into the deep waters of extra time.
Which brings us to the brutal, chaotic reality of the 96th minute. The physical and mental exhaustion is peaking. Japan's Ao Tanaka, who had been incredibly solid all game, receives the ball in a terrible position just outside his own box.
Oh, no.
It's not a lack of skill, right? It's a momentary lapse in cognitive processing due to sheer fatigue. He takes a heavy touch, and the Brazilian midfielder, Bruno Guimarães, pounces on it.
Now, lesser players would feel the adrenaline spike, panic, and just blast a shot at the goal from there. But Guimarães stays remarkably composed. He waits for the defender to commit, he feints to open up the passing lane, and he slides a perfect weighted pass across the box to substitute Gabriel Martinelli.
Martinelli takes it in stride, opens his body perfectly to utilize the angle, and slides a low, precise shot. It bounces agonizingly off the inside of the post and goes in. 2-1 Brazil. The final whistle blows literally moments later.
The heartbreak for Japan is difficult to even articulate. As the CBS report described the scene, the Japanese players simply collapsed, dropping to the turf, lying on their backs, heads in hands, weeping openly.
So tough to watch.
To execute a defensive game plan with that much discipline, against a team with that much pedigree, and to lose it in the 96th minute because of one heavy touch, it is devastating. It is the absolute cruelest reality of tournament football. 4 years of preparation erased in a fraction of a second.
What's really fascinating here is how the source from the International Fair Play Committee contextualizes the aftermath of that devastation.
Yeah.
In moments of extreme heartbreak, when the boss rush ends in a crushing defeat and you are emotionally shattered, how do the victors and the defeated treat each other?
Yeah, that's a huge point.
We talked earlier about the deep cultural respect between these two nations, that lineage going all the way back to Zico, building the J-League.
And you saw that history manifest on the pitch after the final whistle. You didn't see Brazil heavily mocking the opponents or celebrating aggressively in their faces. You saw Brazilian players immediately going to the ground, pulling Japanese players to their feet, consoling them, recognizing the absolute tactical war they just survived.
Yeah, a lot of class.
How a team loses a World Cup knockout match and how the winner handles the gravity of that victory is a profound test of character. It reminds us that underneath the formations and the data, sport at this level is a deeply human endeavor. So what does this all mean? We've looked at the tactical blueprints, the defensive traps, the dramatic turning points, but when you zoom out, what is the core takeaway for you listening right now?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, it's a masterclass in the limits of pristine preparation versus the messy necessity of adaptation. Japan had the perfect symphony, and they played it beautifully for 95 minutes.
Right.
But Brazil, guided by Ancelotti, had the emotional intelligence and the tactical flexibility to look at a failing plan, throw the sheet music away, and completely rewrite their methodology in real time to find a new way to win.
Whether you are prepping for a high-stakes boardroom meeting, managing a volatile startup, or just leading a team through a complex project, the lessons here are universally applicable. You have to respect your opponent's structure. You absolutely cannot panic when your initial brilliant plan hits a brick wall.
Yeah, you have to pivot.
And sometimes you have to completely change the environment to trust your veterans to find redemption, even when the data and the outside noise are telling you to cut them loose.
I want to leave us with one final thought, something that wasn't explicitly answered in the match reports, but kind of lingers in the aftermath of Japan's collapse. It's about the psychology of the underdog.
Okay, I'm listening.
Japan executed a nearly flawless game plan for 95 minutes and still found a way to lose in the dying seconds. It makes you wonder. In any competitive field, whether it's sports, business, or life, when does the psychological weight of past failures become a literal self-fulfilling prophecy? And how exactly does an underdog rewire their brain to finally believe, when the pressure is absolute, that they truly deserve to slay the final boss?
How do you override the internal programming that tells you you're supposed to lose? Because going back to that chess game we talked about at the beginning, Japan had the grandmaster cornered. But in that final chaotic second, Brazil proved they knew how to survive the chaos just a little bit better when the board was flipped over. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the tactics, keep looking for the mechanical truths behind the stats, and as always, keep your curiosity alive. We'll catch you on the next one.